All right, happy Thursday, guys. It is February 10th. We are on the second Facebook Live and Instagram Live of February for 2022. And last week, or 2 weeks ago, really, we were going to be doing asylum or investor visas. So today's topic is going to be investor visas, specifically the E2 Treaty Investor Visa. And if you have any questions, let me know. Forewarning, I'm trying to do this on multiple platforms at one time. So if you have questions, I might not see them on Instagram. Now, before we get started, we always start our lives with some good news, and we have a couple of things going on here. First, timely enough, it's perfect that we have received an E2 visa approval from Ecuador. This was through the consular process, meaning our clients had to travel abroad to the U.S. consulate in order to receive their visa, and allowing for them to obtain a treaty visa settings. So that's our good news for the day. And so congratulations to those clients who have now received E2 visas and have invested in the U.S. from Ecuador. So that's great news for them. And it's also another good news is that we have also allowed to receive a approval of policy limitations for one of our demands for our clients. Attorney Miriam Sardar has been helping me with personal injury, and we just received the maximum policy limits for this particular client, and we are now going after the UM, which is uninsured motorist insurance. And if you recall, we constantly talk about UM. We need you to get UM. This is to help protect you in situations when you don't have the person who hit you or caused the car accident doesn't have a sufficient insurance. You can then go after your own uninsured motorist coverage to make sure that you're completely covered in the event, God forbid, that you are in an accident. So that's really important and something to keep in mind. It's not that difficult to add and to your policy. It's usually a couple of dollars a month, can go a long way. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started with our questions today for the E2 visa. And basically, what is the E2 visa? Let's start there. The E2 is a treaty national investor visa, meaning that you must be a citizen or a national from a specific country that has signed a treaty with the United States. So some countries that are on this treaty list include Spain, Italy, France, Egypt, Jordan. Some countries that are not, that tend to surprise people, might be Lebanon, Brazil, Venezuela. So these countries are not on the treaty country list. But whenever we do a consultation, we try to ask about each family's nationality in order to determine what options are available. Because if one spouse is, that might be sufficient enough in order to qualify for the E2 treaty investor visa. So that's what the E2 is. So like who would want it and why? I mean, there's benefits besides investing in the United States. What are the immigration benefits that come with it? Well, first and foremost, you would be allowed to live and work in the United States with your business enterprise if you are the primary investor. And your spouse would be able to accompany you, and any unmarried children under the age of 21 can also come with you to the United States to live and work here. Now, the children are not eligible for work authorization, but the spouse is. So keep that in mind with regards to planning your life here. You know, your children are not going to be able to work. They will be able to go to school. Now, one thing that's really important that people tend to forget, and I saw a situation yesterday in a consultation, is once the child reaches the age of 21, they're automatically aging out, meaning they will fall out of status if they did not change their status to some other situation. So just because you're I-94, that's usually the length of period or authorized period of stay, may expire, it does not mean, is valid, does not mean that you're allowed to stay here if you're over the age of 21. And we see this time and time again with investor visa family members, especially the children. So the spouse would be able to work, and that spouse is not limited to the investment or the business that they've created, the primary investor is limited to that investment and cannot work outside of that scope. But the spouse would be able to do and work wherever they please. And oftentimes, what we do is, let's say we have two really qualified spouses. One might be a dentist, one might be an engineer. We try to evaluate both of them to see who's going to probably find a job offer here in the United States that will lead to a green card. And so we don't want that individual to be the primary investor, because we don't want to limit them and their ability to work. The idea is we want to find a permanent solution at some point. And a lot of times we use the E2 visa as a gateway or a way to get here with their investments. So let's talk about what are some of the requirements for the E2 visa. It's right there. Thanks. Isa's helping me. So the requirements and benefits, we talked a little bit about the benefits regarding work authorization and the ability to live and work in the US. There's also obviously some strict requirements that we have to prove. Black and white, you have to first and foremost be a citizen or national of one of the treaty countries. So even if you're investing $300,000, but you're a citizen of Brazil, you will not be eligible for the E2 visa because you are not a treaty country. Now, we do see people from Brazil who's like, my grandfather is Italian, or my grandmother is from Italy, and I want to pursue my Italian nationality, and then I will pursue the E2 visa. Now, that sounds like a lot of work, and it's a definitely lengthy process, but we've seen clients do that. So it is important to kind of ask these questions in a consultation or share that information with your attorney in order to determine all the options you have available to you, specifically with the E2. Now, the next question that I see here is, what is the visa's duration? Now, the E2, it's a great question, but it varies from country to country as far as visa. So I want to take a step back and explain the difference between a visa and an authorized period of stay. So the visa is the physical document that you have in your passport that allows you to travel in and outside of the United States. Some visas are valid for 5 years or multiple entries or single entries. But every E2 upon entry will authorize you for a period of 2 years. This I-94 is your authorization, a time document of allowing to remain in the United States. Now, for some countries like Italy, you have a multiple entry and in some cases a 5-year visa where you can come in and out of the United States on that visa and then receive an authorized period of stay for 2 years. For those investors from the country of Egypt, they receive a single entry visa that's only valid for a few months. So that means every time an Egyptian national who is an investor travels abroad, they have to make an appointment at a U.S. consulate to get a new E2 visa in their passport. And that can be really inconvenient for many of our clients. But basically, the treaty that the country signed together is what dictates the rules as to the length of time in your visa. But everybody upon entry will get a 2-year authorized period of stay. You don't need a valid visa to do an extension. So that's good news, especially for people who have no desire to leave at all. All right. How many employees do I need? So we see this question a lot, and there's not necessarily a strict black and white requirement codified in the law like the EB-5, which says you need 10 full-time employees. The E2 visa does not say a limitation of employees, but we use a formula to determine if the business meets the requirements, such as is the investment substantial and is the business not marginal, right? So substantial meaning that the financial investment is sufficient for the proposed endeavor, and so it's going to support the investor and the family and support the business. And then not marginal meaning it's going to have some type of economic impact. What they don't want to see is somebody coming here and buying a house and saying, okay, I've purchased a business, give me a visa. So a lot of times I tell my clients specifically, I want to see 2 or 3 employees, even if they're part-time, in your investment. And this way you can then pursue with an E2 visa if you qualify. Do the employees need to be U.S. citizens? Good question. Actually, we see this question a lot. They don't need to be U.S. citizens. However, they do need to have valid authorization to work. So it could be somebody with a pending asylum, TPS, a green card. Don't necessarily need to be citizens. Again, they just need to be authorized to work here legally. All right, service-based businesses. This is, I believe, is meaning What kind of service-based businesses does that mean?
Someone said I'm starting a service-based business. How am I going to invest $100,000?
Okay, so service-based business meaning, let's say somebody who's an accountant or wants to provide some type of consulting services, they might not be buying a considerable amount of assets that will prove that. And that can be problematic, right? You can't just say, I'm going to come here and invest in myself and open a business. But a lot of times I tell people, well, if you're going to buy equipment, if you're going to invest in marketing, if you're going to invest in an office, these things we can use towards your investment business enterprise to prove that you are actually investing. Now, another thing that we see is a lot of times people ask, what is a good business? Or I have X amount of dollars, what do you suggest? We see a big popularity with franchises. So if you are able to afford a particular franchise or a restaurant, this is really important because it gives a certain amount of credibility to your investment to the immigration officer who is seeing, are you really coming to the US to invest? Or are you simply trying to represent in order to enter the United States? So when you have a signed franchise agreement, or when you have an identifiable logo or name like a Subway, the officer is going to immediately recognize that and take your investment and you serious as an investor or an applicant. So these are some of the things that we see here. Now, another question I saw was, how much do I need to invest? And this, again, is another lawyer answer, which is, it depends, right? So for the investment, we have to look at a couple things. Is the investment substantial enough for the proposed business? And is the business enterprise not going to be marginal? So there's not a number, again, like the EB-5, where it requires $1 million cash for investment in order to qualify. So the E2, we relate back to this formula. And we want to look at, is the business substantial enough? And I know that sounds kind of murky. How do you really decipher if it's substantial enough? But I like to give the example of saying, I have $50,000. I'm going to open a hotel chain. We know that that's not going to be sufficient or substantial for the proposed business. Really important note on investments is that we must prove the source of funds, the legality of the funds being invested in the United States as to where they're coming from, how did you get it, and documenting this to USCIS or the US consulate. Simply depositing $60,000 into a bank account from a cash source is not going to work. So we have to show that either you've been accumulating this money over time and saving it, and we have the payroll and the tax history to demonstrate that, or you could have sold an asset like a piece of property, some stock, you've inherited, or you've even been given a gift. For some of our more younger clients who have more wealthy parents, a lot of times their parents can give them a gift of money in order for them to start their business enterprise. And you don't actually have to be related in order to receive a gift. And so it is an interesting tool that we use sometimes for our E2 investors. I'm going to see if we have any more questions, and then we're going to probably wrap up for this week's live. All right. Okay, so this is an important question. It says, where should I start or purchase a business from? Now, as your immigration lawyer, we could counsel you on the requirements. Does this business meet the requirements of the E2? Are you going to have a successful E2 case? But we're not all necessarily business attorneys who are going to give you advice. Is this a good and safe investment? And before you commit to this, you should have a CPA or somebody or a broker review the financials of an existing business if you plan on purchasing one. So that is something that you really want to take your time to consider, and maybe in some situations monitor the business and to determine, is this something you would like to purchase? And is this something that you think is a safe investment? The other option is to create a new business from scratch. And that can be with a lot of startup, like having a franchise or items like that. So keep these things in mind when you are considering a business. I always tell people, don't relocate your entire family. Do not sell your whole life savings or an assets just for a chance to come here. This is something that you kind of have to plan for and be careful. It's a big life decision, and there's no guarantee. So any attorney who tells you that there's a guaranteed process, they shouldn't be doing their job, because there really isn't guarantees with any immigration, especially any U.S. immigration law process. We have more information on the E2. As I mentioned, we just received an approval from Ecuador. We have a couple other clients pending, I believe, in the UK. So we're looking forward to having them here and welcoming these investors to Central Florida, and to helping our business grow and to helping them obtain the American dream. My name is Naif Mubarak. Thank you guys for joining us today. And please follow us on social media. If you think that anybody would find this video beneficial or helpful, please feel free to share it with them. And we'll see you here next time.